Welcome to
Um,
Momtroversial, the podcast that dives headfirst into the beautiful chaos of motherhood and dishes on the stuff we wish we would have known and nobody tells you. This is your tribe for informed consent and unfiltered real talk. I'm Leah, your scrunchy nurse riding the Hot Mess Express, here to remind you that it's fine, you're fine, everything's fine.
Melissa, Crunchy Mom is all about organic living. I'm organized, opinionated, and your designated wingwoman in any parenting bar fight.
And I'm Tori, your ride or die mom of three who will absolutely hold your baby and your secrets.
And today I am so freaking excited. We are doing a labor and delivery Q&A. So if
Whoop,
you
whoop.
guys see, if you're watching us and you see me looking down, it's because I have my notebook where I've written down all of the questions that were submitted by our listeners. And for those of you guys who don't know, my background is in labor and delivery. I'm a labor and delivery nurse with a specializing in inpatient obstetrics. I have a certification for that, and I've recently become a doula. I've
Yay.
been a part of 700 deliveries across 3 different hospitals and then probably taking care of women into the thousands. So this is like my bread and butter. And this like area of life just gives me so much light and joy and excitement. But before we get into the questions that you guys submitted that you wanted to hear answers to, we wanted to wrap up our wellness series with a little bow. We had some questions about bed sheets and clean swaps for bed sheets, or how bed sheets, what we sleep on, fits into the wellness, clean living world. And I'm going to kick it over to Alyssa, who has done some research and found some information for you guys to break down bed sheets and clean living.
So what happened was we're staying in this house and they've got amazing bed sheets. They're thick, they're warm. My mother-in-law commented on them when she stayed. My father-in-law commented. My parents love them. Like everyone who slept on them is obsessed. So we went out to try and find these bed sheets, and I put out a little poll, and every single person responded with, "Let me know what you find." And I was like, well, that's not helpful. So we went to find it. We went to Amazon. I'm telling you, I probably ordered like $2,000 worth of bed sheets. And Ryan was like, "What are you doing? We might not get paid." And I was like, "No, I'll return them. It's fine. Like, I just need to feel them."
Can return my stuff back to
Man.
Amazon.
So my mother-in-law made this our little pet project together. And we ordered all these bed sheets and we felt them. And what we were looking for personally was really thick, like hotel quality. You know, you kind of like some sheets or like any fabric, like you drop it and it just piles on the floor. But like these had body, like, you know, and there we were looking for softness, longevity. You know, I'm not trying to spend $1 million on bed sheets and then, um, have to get rid of them next year because they pilled. So all that to say, we tried avocado, satva, bowl and branch, purple soft stretch, Macy's Hotel Collection, and then these 2 Amazon brands that came highly recommended: Thread Mill Luxury and Lane Linen. And all of these were either organic cotton or like, how do you say it? Okio-Tex certified, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was.
Like the 100 safe chemical certification?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And we'll link them for you in the show notes. But what we found was the Amazon brand was the best, followed closely by the Macy's brand, but for a whopping $160 more for a king size sheet set. So really, is that the best?
Wow.
Not really. So anyways, it was Thread Mill Luxury. It was 1,200 thread count, Supima long staple cotton. Long staple is, we found out how it doesn't pill because the threads are longer. And it was $220 for a king set, which is not cheap. But for 1,200 thread count, like organic cotton, that felt like, I mean, these sheets that we were sleeping on were like 10 years old. And it's not the same brand. It's like a Kohl's brand that was discontinued. And that's why we had this whole issue. But I'm very excited and will be ordering them for our Arizona house. So we'll link all of that and do a little stories run on it. But that's that.
Okay, real quick, because
Yes.
I have the Lane Linen
Oh,
sheets. How do they compare for you? Like, what made the thread, whatever ones that you said, like better? Because I love my Lane Linen sheets. I think they're phenomenal and
yay.
they're so freaking cheap. They're
Okay,
so cheap.
so
They're so affordable.
Yes, Lane Linen had 1,000 thread count. That was $105. And at the end of the day, it was really nice. It was soft. It just wasn't as thick as we wanted. So if you
Okay.
want a little less thick, what we found, you just have to go down in thread count. That's the thing. You still want the long staple Supima cotton. Just go down in thread count if you want the little less thick. The purple sheets were so soft, but they're bamboo. And so they're like really, really thin. And that's just not what we were going for. But if you want like the soft, stretchy, like jersey bamboo sheets, I think Leah, you guys use these.
Mhm.
That's a great option. But what we were looking for was thick hotel quality, like borderline a weighted blanket.
See, I can't do heavy
I
because
love
I'm
it.
such a hot sleeper, dude, that I end up kicking it all off, and then I freak out thinking a monster's gonna get my feet, so I need something light on me when I kick my
I'm
body
dead.
over.
I don't think I have the same Lane Linen sheets you're talking about because I have like a very middleweight cotton
Okay,
sheet.
so they had
Um,
I'm sorry, they had anywhere from 400 to 1,000 thread count, I think. Maybe even 200 thread
I
count.
don't I don't even know. I'd have to go
There.
and look. I just know
Yeah.
I got my sheets on the
Same with Thread
first,
Mill.
like the July Prime Day
Uh-huh.
for like hella on the cheap. I mean, it was like $50 or something crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa. Now I have
No,
a
their
queen size bed, so they're
prices
not quite
are
as expensive,
amazing.
but like um, yeah, so I've been really happy with them. I bought them for the kids too because they have them in literally every size. They have like
Mhm.
XL twin, RV queen. I mean, like they've got like every possible thing you can
Yeah.
imagine for size. So I love that.
I have one more question
Mhm.
regarding sheets. It's gonna open us up to be very judged and criticized based on your answer,
Yay, let's do
but
it.
I'm genuinely curious because this isn't a conversation that, like, you just have with people.
That's like literally why we're
How
here.
often do you buy new sheets for your beds?
Okay. Probably once a year-ish, give or take. Just because um I don't know, I feel like they get dirty. I feel like I've had sheets rip a lot of that, and that's another reason why we wanted like thicker, like higher quality stuff. Because even cheap sheets aren't that cheap, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Um so yeah, I would say probably once a year, but I'm hoping like to have these for like 5 years at least. Like that would be my goal.
Mhm.
And I just wash them.
Tori?
So I was like kind of a sheets hoarder and I had like 3 or 4 sets, like, in rotation at a time, and so my sheets didn't get as much use, so I'd say, like, I go several years without having to buy sheets. I used to be really addicted is a strong word for this, but this one brand of sheets at Bed Bath& and Beyond, um, they're modal sheets, which I've since learned are still technically a synthetic fabric, which totally really upset me. So I was like, dang it, these sheets were like the best. But part of the reason we didn't replace any sooner is because we were living overseas. It was like hard to
Mhm.
find. I didn't want to do the Amazon thing and have to do the returns and whatever. We were living in Germany when I was like, we really need new
Mm,
sheets. And so when we went
mm,
stateside for like our little jump, our little landing point, I bought new sheets there, but I ended up hating them. And that's why I went for the Amazon, the Lane Linen ones, because I was like, I'm just gonna buy one set. I'm gonna try them out. They were a really good price, like on the June or July Prime Day, and I ended up loving them. So I was a win. Um, so yeah, I just replaced my sheets like within the last few months. So it was either a few years because I had a sheets problem, too many sheets, or I don't know, however long these sheets last. I think for me, it's like, are they pilling? Do they have holes in them? Are they
Yeah.
still soft and like, are they stained? Like there's like all these
mhm,
things. If
Mhm.
they're not stained, if they're not holy, if they're still holding up really well and like they're not
Yeah,
pilling and all that, like why would you replace it?
agreed.
mhm. Yeah, I was just like you, and long time, like, I would keep my sheets for a long time, and it wasn't until my neighbor, Ashley, which Ashley doesn't listen to us, but Ashley Farr, if you're listening to us, called me out because she cleaned our house for us when we had to go to Hawaii when we got transferred during Declan's accident. And I don't remember what we were talking about with sheets. We were talking about something. She said, "Girl, I freaking changed your sheets on your bed. You need new sheets." And I was like,
Thank you.
Dang.
and so now I'm going to start getting new ones every year. And I threw out all my old ones. So I was just curious because I was just never something I'd ever like thought about before
Yeah.
of like in my adult life of buying new sheets because like we've like gone from a queen bed, a full bed to a queen bed to a king bed. So we naturally bought sheets then, but we've had our king bed for a couple of years now. And I just never thought about it. So I was just curious what your thoughts were.
As needed. That's what I would say.
As needed. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that answer. As needed. That's good stuff.
Okay. Well, time to pivot to the meat of this week's episode, labor and delivery questions. So we got 14 questions. We will do our best to try to get through all of them. Depending on time's sake, we may need to do a 2-part episode. So stay tuned. And I guess you'll find out at the end of this episode if we hit it all. So the first question that I wrote down that I think just flows and is a good way to start off with isn't really a question, but it's just a topic that somebody wanted us to discuss. The topic is America deserves better than our C-section and maternal mortality rate. And I'm going to let Alyssa start us off with what your thoughts are about the American C-section rate and maternal mortality rate, despite our advanced medical services that we have.
So real quick, these are all our opinions. It is not medical advice. Tori and I can't really give medical advice, but Leah's not giving medical advice either. Opinions. And on that, I mean, I will say like my only education in labor and delivery is having labored and delivered twice. But but for C-section rate, I remember I was listening to a podcast, and a doctor was talking about how they would sometimes do what's called pit to distress. And they would up the Pitocin so much on a laboring mom that it would trigger baby's distress. And then they would do a C-section and they would make more money off of it. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? But I didn't have a C-section with Reagan, but I remember like they just kept upping the Pitocin and upping the Pitocin. I listened to this podcast after that, but I remember thinking back and being like, holy crap. But yeah, so I do think it's a huge issue. I think that doctors aren't, I think it's a lot of times about convenience for them, you know? I think that's less the case for nurses, but Leah, you can probably speak to that more. I always felt like my nurses were willing to work with me more than the doctor was. With the exception of the doctor I had deliver KK, she was amazing. She was so great. Anything I wanted, she was like, the baby's fine, she's fine, she can do it. And I really appreciated that. But yeah, as far as maternal mortality rate, honestly, I don't have a lot to speak on that. I don't know a lot about it. Other than I know it's higher than most other developed countries.
Yeah. So like Alyssa said, not medical advice, just sharing opinions and experience with all of these questions. One thing that I feel very passionate about is I do feel like women feel like we have lost control when it comes to childbirth and labor. And it has become something that is very, very scary and anxiety riddled when it is something that God created. Your body will do it on its own. The medicine is phenomenal in the way that it has saved women in certain circumstances. But a lot of things, there's so much misinformation out there. And I truly believe that education is the key to empowering you to take back your control of your labor and delivery experience to have a more satisfied birth experience. So that's the whole reason why we wanted to do this episode, just to preface. But again, because I do have the nursing degree, not giving medical advice because I'm not a provider, but I'm sharing with you my experience. If you have questions about it, always check with your provider. End of story. And every single non-medical provider or like non-MD, non-physician is going to tell you that. If you ask your nurse at the hospital, she will tell you that. If you call the unit, they will tell you that. Unless it's a MD physician, technically we cannot give medical advice. Just prefacing with that. So America's C-section rate is 32% of live births were C-section. And that's from the American Medical Association. And mortality rate of delivery is like 0.2 of 100,000 vaginal births and 2.2 for cesarean delivery, which is still considered pretty high. And this was from the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, which is still pretty high for like Western society. So I was smiling when you said pit to distress because I have been told by physicians before pit to distress, but in the way that the podcast you are listening to explains it, that's not the way that it's truly meant by providers in the labor and delivery sphere. A lot of times what it means is when you're in labor, the baby has to come out, right? You're in labor. We have to have a baby one way or the other. Once we're in active labor, the baby can't stay in there forever. And so sometimes what will happen is babies will start showing signs of stress, but the mom's labor isn't progressing. And so it gets to a certain point where we have to make a decision. How are we going to have this baby? Is she going to progress in labor on her own, which she has not yet? Or are we going to have a C-section? But we don't want to just give her a C-section without giving her a full chance to have the baby vaginally. And so in those cases, if she's not laboring, then they'll say, a provider may say pit to distress. So until it gets to the point where that baby has declared, I'm not doing this, and we have to have a C-section. That doesn't mean until harm is coming to your baby. That means until we have seen enough evidence from your baby that they will not tolerate the contractions, no matter what, that we need to go ahead and have a C-section. That being said, I personally, from my experience, don't believe that that is the problem. I believe the biggest problem is that the United States is the most litigation-happy country, like in the world. Providers can be sued until the child is 2 to 3 on average, in some cases 18 years old, by the parents for malpractice, negligence, or something when it comes to obstetrics and gynecology. So a lot of the C-section rate, I think part of it is contributed to there are a lot of doctors who at the end of the day, they want a healthy baby. At the end of the day, they would rather give you a C-section if there's any signs of distress with your baby than to risk something happening and then it ends up harming the baby, you, or a lawsuit. So it's like a CYA, cover your butt thing. And that's from conversations I've had with doctors who don't necessarily want to do the evidence-based practice because they're not comfortable with it because they don't know and it scares them. For example, a trial of labor after a C-section, a lot of doctors don't like doing that because they're scared that there's a risk of a uterine rupture. And so they would rather just have another C-section for you because they don't want to assume that risk. And so that's why I tell people it's important to ask a lot of questions from day one at your OB appointment to make sure you're getting in with an OB who you and your provider align with the type of experience that you would want. And so with the maternal mortality rate, it's sad. I don't know why we have it. I mean, if you want to go back to COVID, I know that rates shot up during that, and I witnessed it several times, and it was really heartbreaking. But I don't have any explanation for that. It's just sad. The C-section rate thing, my biggest recommendation to prevent C-sections for moms, don't be electively induced. If there is not a medical indication for an induction, you don't need to be induced. I don't care if it's better for your schedule. The only time as a military wife that I feel like it's okay is if your husband's about to deploy. and you
Yeah.
want to have this baby before your husband deploys. But otherwise, unless it's medical, you don't need an elective induction. I don't care what your doctor says.
It's so
Post dates is
miserable.
42 weeks pregnant, and you can go until 42 weeks per American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology until you're at risk of like complications. And so that is the second thing I think that contributes to the highest C-section rate, and why we have so many C-sections is because everybody and their mom is getting electively induced. I can't tell you
Literally.
how many times it happened. And a lot of times the risk of a C-section when you're getting induced when you're not ready is don't quote me, I don't know 100%, but it's like 50%. And so before I go on to the next question, that's going to kind of go into inductions. Tori, do you have anything you want to add to your thoughts on that?
So I just wanted to say that I feel like the last thing that you said is such a pushed thing. The elective
Mm-hmm.
inductions, I wouldn't even put it, there are definitely people who are like, oh, this is better for my schedule or whatever. But I think more times than not, women are going into their appointments and their providers are like, oh, you're at 39 weeks. Or you're 38 weeks. You want to schedule an induction for 39 weeks. You want to schedule an induction for 40 weeks. Like they're offering it, which makes women, we kind of talked about this in a previous episode where it's like this almost like, and this is not in a bad way, but like this ignorance of like not knowing
Mm-hmm.
any better, especially if you're a first time mom or like you don't know any other way. And if your doctor's suggesting it, then it's got to be good, right? It's got to be
Yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, by the time we get to that point, we are so done being pregnant. Like it is like
Mm-hmm.
so tough and like, so hard, especially you have, if it's not
Mm-hmm.
your first time, and you have other kids, it's like you're even more exhausted. And so like, it's starting to sound really good getting that baby out, right? And so all the
Yeah.
stars seem to align with an elective induction. And so I think more times than not, like it is so pushed by the doctors and
Mm-hmm.
typically not in an aggressive way or anything, but like, so people are like, "Oh yeah, sure, why not? I'd love to have this baby out." I didn't know the statistics on like what you said about the, 50% of elective inductions end in a C-section, or I don't know if you said elective, but just
Let me look up what the
inductions.
actual stat. It's the risk of a C-section.
Gotcha. So that has like always terrified me personally from before I was ever pregnant. And then when I did get pregnant with Hannah for the first time, I was like terrified of a C-section. Like even now after 3 children, I'm still terrified to have a C-section. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I don't want to be cut open. Like I'd rather all this other stuff happen.
I'd rather
And
push a baby out through my vagina than get cut open.
literally, literally 3 more times. No, just kidding. Um, Well, and this is coming from someone, and I know we're getting into birth stories like way later on, but I had a obstetric emergency my last birth, and I still would not even go, even though I know if I get pregnant again, which that's a big if, by the way, for anyone wondering and whatever. But um, if I were to ever get pregnant again, I know that's something that they would really push because of the
Mm-hmm.
emergency that I had. And so, um, and I still wouldn't advocate for
Mm-hmm.
if a friend was
Mm-hmm.
asking me like, "Should I do this?" My personal opinion answer would be no.
Yeah. So the actual stat for people who are interested, the NIH did a study back in 2017. And in this study, more than a third of the women in their study were induced. So 34% of their study were induced. 24.8% of those women ended up having a C section.
Dang.
So a quarter of the women who were induced ended up having C sections.
Makes sense. Your
They were
baby's not
more
ready.
likely,
Right.
correct. Yeah. You're more likely to deliver by cesarean section, 35.9% of women than those who go into spontaneous labor. And that's an NIH study for people who want the stats.
That
Um,
is wild.
so that going into it, a question we had was when and when not to be induced, which again, not medical advice, my personal opinion from my experience as a nurse. The only time I would be okay getting an induction for myself is if it's medically indicated. So examples of medical indications are things like gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, cholestasis, intrauterine growth restriction. I hate this one, but it is valid because there's higher risk of stillbirth with it. It's advanced maternal age is one of them. So anything that is medical, I would be okay. And that's personally as a nurse because I have seen other outcomes with an induction at that point because it's safety of my child and or myself on some of those situations over, um, you know, letting yourself labor in your own. At the end of the day, right? We want everybody to end up being healthy. And electively, I wouldn't do it, period. Like to me, an elective induction is not one. And so that's why, again, when it comes to things, labor and delivery, you need to think about these things before your first appointment with your provider. And you need to write down a list of questions and take it to this appointment with your first provider. What's your C-section rate? What are you going to do if I go to 40 weeks pregnant and I don't go into labor? Which, to be honest with you, statistically speaking, the majority, hold on, I have a stat right here. The majority of first time moms, if you have never had a baby before, will not go into labor by exactly 40 weeks. I think with Caucasian women, 41 weeks is the average delivery. And then with Black women, 40 weeks is the average delivery. And only
Lucky.
5% of women deliver on their due date.
All right.
Yeah. So
Fun
that's
fact, I was delivered on my due date.
delivered technically at 4:30 a.m. right after I went into labor on my due date with Ella. But if I was in the States, I would have delivered on my due date.
Ooh, there you go.
So does it
Right.
count? Because I came to
Yeah.
Korea
Yeah,
and I technically
it
like jumped
counts.
into the
It counts.
future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that counts. KK was 39 and 6. Reagan,
Look at
I
us
was
being 5%.
induced. I was induced for a medical reason for cholestasis with Reagan. And I was able to prevent the cholestasis from coming back, which is just a whole nother thing with KK. But even if I had had it, I would have asked the doctor to keep a close eye on my levels. And if they were low enough, I would have asked to just have extra monitoring and not being induced because it was so miserable with Reagan.
Mhm. And in some situations, that's appropriate depending on what you have going on. Going in and getting, they call it a neonatal stress test, where they monitor the baby's heart rate and they monitor like ultrasounds. So that is an option. But yeah, when it comes to the question of why to be induced versus why not, my personal preference, if it's medical, yes. If it is elective, no. And this is why you need to ask your provider at the beginning of your pregnancy. What are you going to do if I'm 40 weeks and I haven't gone into labor yet? Because you don't want to have to be fighting a provider or dealing with a provider who's unhappy with you. And I have another thought on that, but that will kind of like transition into another question talking about doulas. I would also recommend doulas because that's a support person who can help you navigate some of those conversations. So, Tori, what are your thoughts on that?
Just wanted to give a couple tips for, some of our male spouses or people who live in areas where there's like one OB or they don't have a lot of choices to
Mhm.
kind of go around because, I've been in that position and like twice. Um and I was 41 and 1 with Charlie. That's when I went into labor naturally and had him. And I think to throw back to something Leah said is like research is so important, knowing what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, what you want, what your body can handle, and all those things. I think is just like imperative that you are well researched on this topic if you're pregnant and about to have a baby because I knew that everything that we're talking about I was very well researched on for myself, and I was very comfortable going all the way to 42 weeks. And they pressured me at every single visit starting at like 37 weeks. They wanted me to schedule an induction several weeks in advance. And I'm like, no, thank you. No, thank you. And, it's not really, it is advice, but it's really just holding your ground, having that conviction and having the research in your mind to back it up and being like, no, I'm not going to just cave to what somebody might say or, when I knew, based on actual research and science was what was best for me, not like hearsay or an Instagram post or something like that. Like,
Mhm.
I had looked at actual research, um, the organization you mentioned earlier, the obstetrics and gynecology, like
Mhm.
found association. I was finding my facts in actual research. And so, and they never really pressed me, but I know that there are some situations where that might be the case, that you might have to actually hold your ground, because I just said no thank you, and they were like, okay, here's the
Yeah.
paper just in case you want to change your mind. And that was
Mm-hmm.
that. You might have a
Mm-hmm.
pushier partner where you're like, oh no, but baby's so big, or but you really should,
Mm-hmm.
like, um don't you want to, just do this? You're so uncomfortable. Whatever it is, you may, get some more kickback from the provider. And maybe it's because they have a holiday they want to go on, or, you don't know what the reasons behind the scenes are for those things. And I would hope that that wouldn't be the case. But yeah, I just wanted to give that, like, do that research, find your convictions, and stick to them. And it's okay for you to say no. I think so
Mm-hmm.
many of us think, like, "Oh, no, the provider knows," because it has become this very scary situation, where you're, like, wondering what is if you're gonna survive birth. I mean, that's just, like, really wild.
Yeah.
This very natural thing that's been happening and keeping civilization alive for thousands of years, and then you're just like, "Oh, no, am I gonna survive?" Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would
but
say on that note, though, it has been happening for thousands of years. Like, you're gonna survive. Don't stress. Like,
Yeah.
yes,
do
that's what I mean, like, the fact
yeah.
that this has been happening for so long, but there's all these things that we're now inundated with and knowledge of, like, modern
Yeah.
medicine,
Mm-hmm.
I think
that
it's
it
more of a
becomes, like,
scare
this
tactic.
terrifying. Yes, 100%,
So
I
Yeah.
agree.
I think with a lot of the providers, again, I think a lot of it is like a CYA. And when you're close enough to be delivered, they would rather have you deliver than risk you going longer and something happening to your baby. Um, I think another thing is, and I don't think it's most, but providers want to deliver their patients. They don't want somebody else to have to deliver you for both you and them. And so sometimes that's why they may be pushing it. And that's just, again, from my experience and don't get me wrong, there are some slimy providers out there, but the majority of them are not. The majority of them do have good intentions, but a lot of times, again, almost everything comes down to CYA, covering your butt and wanting to make sure to the best of their ability that nothing bad's going to happen. And that's a lot of the drive behind what they do. And when you understand that they're not just trying to force something on you, I think it can give us a little bit of grace for the medical community, even though I know the medical community's done it to themselves. But I think there's fear mongering on both sides. I
It's
think the
so
holistic
fair.
community does fear mongering, and I think the medical community does fear mongering, period.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
completely agree with you.
a fun fact that I want to share for you, and then we'll move on next one. You were talking about big baby, and I can't
Mm,
tell you how many times I've taken care of patients who were induced because they had a big baby at their last ultrasound. But just for awareness for everyone to know, third trimester ultrasounds have like a false rate or an inaccuracy rate of 15 to 20%,
Don't get me
like 7 to 10
started.
days measuring, and it's like a pound either direction. So because your third trimester ultrasound said that baby looks big, that does not mean that baby looks big. I can't tell you how many women I had who were induced because they thought the baby was gonna be like 9 pounds and it ended up being 7 pounds.
Yeah.
No,
Freaking
like
annoying.
usually if
yeah.
the baby's big, we know the baby's big from the start, or your gestational diabetes or something like that. It's not just an out of nowhere. So it's just a fun fact for you guys. It's technically you don't have to be induced just because they said at that last ultrasound your baby's big. You'll be fine. Um, the next question somebody had was they wanted to know what a bishop score was based off of their personal experience, and they would love to know a little bit more about it. So I'm going to read you the full definition, and then I can break that down a little bit from the labor nurse perspective. The bishop score is something we use in obstetrics to predict the success of a labor induction by evaluating your cervix's readiness for birth. So this is an anatomy lesson. Your cervix, you have your birth canal. And then you have your uterus, which is where your baby is, and your cervix is the opening to your uterus. So at the bottom of your uterus is your cervix, and that opens into the birth canal. So that is how sperm gets in to fertilize the egg that's been released, that then implants to get you pregnant. And then that's how the baby comes out. And there are 5 different things we look at for your cervix. The way I describe it to people, which it sounds really silly, but is if you look at my pinky finger, this is like what your cervix like normally looks like, just
So
really
stressful.
high up. It's like this really thick, long tissue, but when you have a baby, it turns into like a rubber band hair tie where your entire baby can fit through it, which is bananas that it goes from like this to this. And that's because it goes from being really thick, which we call cervical effacement, to really thin, and then it opens. So it goes from being closed to 10 centimeters. And then your cervix is normally what we call firm. So again, kind of like your finger, if you were to do a self exam, it would just feel like just this weird tissue, and that prevents bacteria from getting into your uterus, causing an infection during your pregnancy. That firm, thick, closed cervix. And then it's also what we call posterior. So it's towards your back, like of your tailbone area, which again prevents bacteria, and then high up until your baby's ready. So the Bishop score looks at your dilation, how thick your cervix is, how soft it is, where it is in your baby's station. And it can range anywhere from a 0 to a 3 on each of those. So your max score is 15. And a low score is 4 or less, which is not favorable for an induction. If your score is anywhere between 5 and 7, that's just, it's like what those survey tests where it's like neither neutral or neither agree, disagree. So if your Bishop score is between 5 or 7, it doesn't agree or disagree. It can't tell like what your induction would look like. And then if it's 8 or more, that's technically favorable for an induction.
So
So
what do
for
you
example,
mean when you say that favorable or not favorable? Favorable to
so
have
I'll give you an
one?
example. Favorable, yeah. So if you get induced, then it's a high chance of a successful vaginal birth with an induction. If your cervical score is like, if your Bishop score is like a 9, then odds are you're going to go into labor on your own at some point. So you don't
Gotcha.
necessarily need that. So for example, we'll do a Bishop score example. Let's say, we'll do me. When I went in to, when I was with Declan, 39 weeks and 3 days was when I went into labor. And my doctor checked me. I was 1 centimeter. She said my cervix was soft. She said that it was low. So low, they do stations, but low would be like a 0 station. It goes from like -3 to +3. +3 is literally baby's crowning. -3 is your baby's up in your tonsils. We're not ready to have a baby yet. So that she said that Declan was low. So I'm gonna assume that that's like a -1. We'll say -1. We'll go on the lower end for myself. I'll say -1. And then it was a good position, so it was more anterior. And she said it was thin. It was like 80% effaced. So if you look at a Bishop score, if you guys are curious about this, you can literally Google Bishop score chart and re-listen to me explain that with it being 1 centimeter, that's 1 point for dilation. Being 80%, that was 3 points. So now my Bishop score is at 4. With it being soft, that was 2 points. So my Bishop score is at 7. My station was -1. So now my Bishop score, no, that's 6. I can't count. 6. Now my Bishop score is at 8. And then she said it was middle or anterior. So let's go middle because I'm going to just give myself lower scores. That's still 9.
Mm.
And I did go into labor on my own that night and had Declan the next day. But if your cervix is closed, if they say closed, thick, and high, if you'll hear a provider say that, that's 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
It's not time.
They should not be inducing you if you're closed, thick, and high unless it's medically indicated.
Okay, I really wish I would have known about this when I was at, like, having Johnny, because I was induced on 40 weeks, like the day of 40 weeks. Now, I was in Germany, so they're very gentle on inductions there. It's like 1 pill a day because they really don't
Mm-hmm.
want to overload your body. They're very naturally minded there, even in
Mm-hmm.
their just regular medicine. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've never ever asked what my Bishop score was ever one time in all 3.
That's a good question to
But
ask when they want to induce
it
you too. Say,
It
Yeah.
oh, so
totally
what is my
is.
Bishop score again?
Yeah. I
That'd be like,
wonder
"Oh,
though
shoot,
with
this
being in
girl."
Germany, like, so German healthcare is also kind of different. So I saw a German OB, and then the hospital OBs are who deliver. So, and I didn't know really how that worked. I never thought to ask, I guess, but it's like you see this OB for your whole pregnancy, and then you go to the hospital and you get delivered by somebody else. And I didn't know it was an option that you could see those providers. I just knew I wanted this specific OB, and I didn't really think past that.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't even know how, like, if they use Bishop score, if that's what they call it in Germany. Like, so it's a very different experience. But I was
Mhm.
just curious because it took 3 days to induce me in the German hospital.
Jeez.
And it was very, like, it was like nothing was happening basically. Um,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden everything was happening and it was really wild. But story for another day. But it's so funny to talk about inductions because I feel like I've had 2 inductions and nothing for my 3, and it, like, both inductions were very, very different and very, like, crazy, and but hearing Bishop score, when we got that question, I was like, "I really wanna know the answer to this," because I feel like, my Bishop score was, like, very low when I was induced with John
Mhm.
because it just I don't know, it took too long to
Mhm.
it took too long to induce me, like, he wasn't ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's
just
really
interesting.
interesting. And so the longest part of inductions is they're trying to what we call ripen your cervix. So they're trying to
Mhm.
get before they start you on Pitocin, they're trying to get that Bishop score higher before they like put you on Pitocin and like really get things going. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
love Bishop scores. The
Love
next
learning new
question,
things. I love that.
bro, this literally just gives me this is I miss the floor. I'm not gonna lie. I miss delivering moms because this is literally what I did all day. Like I did the medical stuff, but I did so much teaching because I think it's so valuable, and then it makes it less scary
Mhm.
when we're doing stuff, you know?
Feel like had someone said like, "Hey, this is your score and this is why, like this is where we need to progress, this is why, whatever." It
Mhm,
would help you conceptualize your labor. Like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, like
mhm,
this needs to happen before this." And then it kind of cuts down on the impatience
mhm.
and,
Yep,
maybe helps
mhm,
to relax a little bit and let your body move
yep,
along a little bit more naturally.
yep. It's so true. So true. The next question we had was somebody wanted to know about the stages of birth. So there are technically 4 stages of labor, and then the first stage of labor has 3 parts. So your 4 stages of labor, you have onset of labor, so the very beginning with your contractions to 10 centimeters dilated, 100% effaced, getting ready to have the baby. Stage 2 of labor is when you're pushing. So that is when you are delivering the baby. Stage 3 of labor is when you deliver your placenta. And then stage 4 of labor is like the recovery time. So 1 hour after your placenta. So when medical providers say, or if you've looked at medical records to see what your total length of labor is, it is from the time that you started actively contracting to the end of that recovery, those 4 stages combined. And I think I wrote down somewhere like the average first time mom labor is like 17 hours,
Oof.
17 and a half hours. So from the very beginning to the very end on average. Um, and then stage 1 of labor, which is one that everybody really cares about realistically. Like this is the labor. When you hear labor, this is what you're thinking of. So this is the contracting. This is from the time you start contracting to the time you're ready to have a baby. That has 3 stages. There's the early phase, which is from 0 centimeters dilated to 6 centimeters dilated. This is the hardest stage of labor. Personal preference, also based off of what I've seen, because this is the most annoying
The
long
waiting
part of
period.
labor. Correct. Because
Nothing's
once you get into
happening.
but I'm uncomfortable, right? I can't
Yeah.
get comfortable. I just want to take a nap, but I can't sleep because when these contractions come, like they're bothering me. Um, and I feel like this one, is also you're the most anxious during this stage because you're not truly zoned in yet because of the way that these contractions are. They're anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes,
It's really
30 to
just
45
annoying.
seconds.
Like, they kind
Yeah,
of hurt, but they're annoying. Like, ugh.
correct. So this was when I got my epidural with Declan because Travis was asleep and I didn't wake him up. And I was just annoyed and it hurt and it was uncomfortable. And I was like, I just want a freaking epidural. Like, I'm done with this. Um, and so I feel like this is where most women usually will actually like get their epidurals. Some women will try in the active phase. So when you hear people say that it's too late for an epidural, sometimes it is this active transition phase because that's when you get to 6 centimeters. So active is from 6 to 8 centimeters, but your contractions are like every 2 to 4 minutes, every 60 seconds. This is when it's taking your breath away. You can't talk. You can't focus. If your husband's trying to touch you, you're like, get off of me. I love you, but go away. Like you did this to me. Um, and then transition is when you're from 8 to 10 centimeters. So your contractions are 60 to 90 seconds long. And they're every 2 to 3 minutes. So this is right before you're about to push. So a lot of times when people are transitioning, this is when you start losing it. And this is when you feel like you are going to have a bowel movement on yourself. This is when it gets real. And you usually forget this part because your body naturally releases oxytocin, which is your love hormone, and it has an amnesia effect. And so this is why women keep having babies because we forget this part with the oxytocin that floods our system after the baby's born. So those are the different stages of birth and stages of labor. Transition stage is the one where truly, if you ask for an epidural, your healthcare provider may tell you no, it's too late because by the time they do the epidural, it kicks in, things like that, you're already going to have a baby. And that's 8 to 10 centimeters usually. What are your guys' thoughts on those?
Honestly,
Yes.
I'm just sitting here thinking about when I was in transition with Charlie. I don't know. I'm just like, that was such a like weird time for me because I did get to be where I was like, nobody touched me, like, and I was just kind of like in this weird like mindset. But
Mhm.
the day I delivered Charlie, there were like 3 other births like at the same time that I was trying to have Charlie. They said that was like a record birthday. They had like 8 or 10 births that day. It was like really crazy. Like everyone was trying to have babies that day. Um so I hadn't really been admitted. Like I was in the hospital for several hours just kind of walking around getting through my contractions and stuff like that. Well, the nurse, she's like, "Yeah, I heard your sounds change. So I think we should get you admitted."
It,
And
it
so
happens. There's a pitch. There's a change in
yeah,
the pitch of the noise that a mom makes. And once you've been around me
yes.
enough, like I can hear that pitch and I'm like,
Yes.
oh shoot, God. Like that baby's coming.
She came running and was like, "Let's get you admitted." So I was being admitted to the hospital during transition. And so I just think about that time. But honestly, like, and this is not to toot my own horn, I'm actually surprised by my own self. I was so calm outside of the contraction period. I was so calm and I was so nice to people. And like, they're like delivering my dinner while I'm in transition. The anesthesiologist is in there like talking to me about,
Hmm.
in case you have to have some sort of anesthesia, like I need to sign consent
Yeah.
forms. And here's another plug. Okay. This is like my testimony, my birth testimony right now. Had I not been completely informed on everything I wanted, didn't want whatever that I was comfortable with, had I not been completely convicted and no, because I'd researched so much, I would have just signed my life away and let them do anything. But
Hmm.
because I knew that I wasn't comfortable with certain things, I wasn't comfortable with the vacuum, the forceps. I didn't want an episiotomy. Like there were certain things that I was very adamantly against having done to me. And even though I was in actual transition signing my consent forms to be admitted, I still checked those. I said, what if I don't want these things? And they said, then X them out and an
Yeah.
initial next to it, and that'll be that. And story for another day, but lo and behold, like, had I not done that and X those things out, I would have had a very, very different birth than what I actually had with Charlie. And although it was traumatic, it could have been like significantly more so. And so I could even, because I was so well researched, this is the moral of the story, because I was so well researched and so convicted and so sure of what I wanted and didn't want, I was able to adequately and legitimately sign my consent forms without without like being distracted from what my body was doing. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
I don't know.
I annotated my forms. I was like, this is what I like and this is what I don't want, and you can do this and you can't do this. And they were like, are you serious right now? And I was like, I was in contracts. Like,
I love that flex. I love that. I love that.
they were not pleased.
But if you're well
So
researched, you can even advocate for yourself in transition. That's what I'm trying to say. In the most
yeah.
horrid part of labor, where some of us
Yep.
throw up, some of us are screaming, like, you know, some people are like cursing their husbands. Like, it is the worst part of labor transition. But you can still
Mhm.
advocate for yourself if you're prepared to do so.
Yeah. So another question somebody had was ways to cope with natural childbirth. So like unmedicated pain. So Tori, did you you didn't get an epidural with Charlie, did you?
No, I was completely
Okay.
unmedicated with him.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. Wait, okay. We have to do birth stories like next because I have so many questions then about that. Okay. And so I had one epidural with Declan and then unmedicated with Ella. So, for ways of coping with natural childbirth, one thing that I recommend, which I wish I would have known about sooner, is getting a doula. If you're military, TRICARE covers it. If you're not, other insurances cover it. And even if your insurances don't cover it, I still recommend it because studies have shown that there is a 31% reduction in likelihood of negative birth experiences with a doula, 29 to 47% lower risk of a preterm birth, and 25 to 52% lower risk of C-section, and overall increased satisfaction with birth rates. And women with doulas are 46% more likely to attend postpartum checkups and have decreased risk of postpartum depression. So that's a number one thing I would recommend because the job
That's
of the doula is to
amazing.
support you and educate you on and help you cope with all of these things in labor. Another
Mm,
thing I recommend is use your support person. Wake your husband up, use him, tell him what to do, take a birthing class. Recommend the SNOT out of birthing classes or birth education. And one other thing I recommend too is spinning babies is great. They have done a bunch of different positions for you. Another thing, chiropractic care before you're pregnant, like during your pregnancy, being physically active during your pregnancy. And if there are any little ears, you may want to plug them real quick or pause and come back. But having lots of sex during your third trimester of pregnancy. Because if a baby is about to come out of your birth canal, but you can't tolerate something going into your birth canal, you are not going to tolerate labor when that baby is coming down and out. And somebody had asked for ways to prevent tearing, and that's a huge one. Providers will say perineal massage, but that's just freaking weird and uncomfortable when sex does the same thing. Um, and then last but not least on my thought, and then I'll hand it off to Tori and Alyssa for ways that you guys coped without pain management or before pain management, is if you have a bathtub, studies have shown that submerging your belly in a bath, like so your whole belly, if this is my big belly is underwater, has the same pain relief effect as narcotics. Instead of
mm,
having to get IV medication narcotics, which go to your baby, and a lot of us don't want, if you get in the bathtub, put your belly in the water, it has the same mental endorphin release as if you were to get that pain medicine.
Yeah,
I
oh, I don't have a
No, go
lot
ahead.
of advice here because I got an epidural both times. I will say I know what the heck I'm doing differently next time because I really don't want the epidural. I
Mhm.
think it really messed up my back with KK. With Reagan,
Mm,
I was induced at 37 weeks. She was not ready to come. Um,
yeah.
I just got to that point. But my husband is wonderful. Love him to death. He has no instinct for birthing support, just none. It's not there.
That's why you need a doula.
Exactly. So I told him after KK, I was like, "Listen, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. You're not very good at this, and I don't have the mental space during labor to walk you through what you need to do. So, we're gonna get someone else to help us with that." And he really like, he has all the intentions, he's not being lazy, he's not being detached, he's just it's not his strength. He has lots of other strengths, but labor and delivery support is not one of them. So, yes, that and
Mhm.
I have always been like, I'm a swimmer, I've always been more comfortable in the water, I love being in the water, um, and you better believe for whenever I have my next birth, I will be in the water. Um,
Mhm.
so other than that, I can tell you that from 1 to 2, my births got astronomically better, probably mostly because I wasn't induced with KK. But, like, I did feel like there was at least progress, which made me feel better about,
Mhm.
getting the epidural the second time. I also got the epidural and less than an hour later, KK was there, so that pissed me off because I was like, "I really could have done this." But, yeah. Anyways, Tori.
So I will say, like, so all 3 of my births have been very, very different as well. I call Hannah's birth my medically managed birth because it was from pre-labor to, and I don't mean pre-labor like Braxton Hicks, I mean just mean like before labor started to the end. It was like 100% like medically managed. I actually referred to myself as like a cyborg because I had something coming out of every arm, every leg. I had a catheter. I had all kinds of crazy stuff with her. Um, and so I will say the Pitocin contractions are significantly different than a regular natural contraction, and I could not really handle the pain well. It was also my first one, so I don't know how I would do now. I feel like I'm stubborn enough that I would still try to do it with no with no medicine because I won't even take a Tylenol. And that was before all the Tylenol conspiracy, Tylenol gate stuff came out. This has been years in the making that I've refused to take Tylenol. Um, but with, I think being prepared, like preparing your mind, like you are going to be in a lot of pain. You are going to experience something you've never experienced before. It is going to really suck. Like, and you have to decide, like, it's kind of one of those choose your hard situations, you know, have a plan, have a backup plan. And also, you just have to be free to know that it's okay to differ from the plan. Show up prepared, but don't like be stuck on anything because that's just not how it's going to go. I did not want any pain medication with Charlie. I got IV pain medication with Johnny because I had never experienced a real contraction before and I had no idea what was happening. And I was just like started panicking and they were like,
Mhm.
either we do something for the pain or we're headed to the OR. And I was like terrified. I was like, give me anything. I won't go. Well, that was like so short lived and it made me so sick. I actually threw up and almost passed out in the delivery room because I was like coming down off of those narcotics and I didn't know they were going to transfer to baby or I would have never taken them. Like there just
Yeah.
wasn't, I was not educated still going into my second birth. It was also interesting that you said your whole belly had to be submerged in the tub. I was in a room with a labor tub, but I was not fully submerged because I swear I thought I was dying in that tub. I was dying. I was like, I don't understand what people are talking about with this tub situation. I'm not feeling that everything is worse and I can't even move and I hate everything in this tub. And I had a failed epidural and my back was totally messed up. So I'm like was absolutely anti everything with Charlie because of all of my past experiences. And I just also have to highlight birth partner because I told my husband, I was like, listen, I'm gonna need you to like be the guy, okay? I need you to be my coach. I need you to be like my support, help me breathe through the contractions, like be on the level with me. Like, I'm your priority. Like, I need you to do this. And he's like, okay. And he freaking delivered. Okay. But like, birth partner is everything.
I'm going to rock your world here a little bit.
Love it.
So
I'm
when
ready.
Pitocin is the synthetic form of oxytocin. Oxytocin is your love hormone. That is the hormone that makes you start contracting. It is also the same hormone that's released when you hug your partner or someone you love. It is also the same hormone that's released when you have an orgasm. It is also the same hormone that's released when you put that baby on your chest for the first time after having a baby. Every single time that hormone is released naturally, it goes into your bloodstream and your cerebrospinal fluid. And when it goes into your cerebrospinal fluid, it has what we call an analgesic effect, which basically means a pain management effect. So it has an effect that if you are experiencing pain, helps your body to naturally handle it. So that's why sometimes it is easier for us when you are laboring without Pitocin. It is easier to cope with those contractions because you're having natural pain management in that case. When you are given Pitocin at the hospital, it is still going to have the same mechanism of action causing contractions, but it is only going into your bloodstream. So you're getting all of like the contraction strength, but you are not getting any of that natural pain relief
What do we say
because it's
about
not going
synthetic
into.
things?
Yeah.
F and
So
synthetics.
that's why your Pitocin contractions are more intense. And I think every single woman who I've ever asked who has had Pitocin, they say it every single time that the Pitocin is so much worse. And as a nurse, you will never hear me crap on anyone who gets an epidural when they're being induced on PIP because it's freaking miserable. I also want to give some grace to epidurals
Mm.
because I had an epidural with Declan and had no back issues from it.
Same with Reagan.
And
Same with Anna.
um,
Yeah.
so for people who, because I know that's a huge fear as a nurse, I know that's a huge, 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 huge fear of people. More often than not, you're usually okay. It depends on the anesthesia provider.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on where you're at. And I'm going to be honest, civilian hospitals are way better than military hospitals. Was KK a military hospital?
Yeah, both of them were.
Okay. And was Johnny? No, Johnny was Germany.
Mm-hmm. He was like a
Right. Okay.
German Catholic
So I don't know
hospital.
much about Germany, but civilian hospitals are way better than military hospitals. So any of my military moms, I need you to hear me with this. And the reason why is because at civilian hospitals, we usually do higher volume unless you're at the right military hospital. So your anesthesia personnel at most civilian hospitals spend a ton of freaking time in labor and delivery, doing a ton of epidurals and a ton of spinals and things like that. So they are usually way better practiced than a military hospital. So for example, Tori, at BDAC when Charlie was born, you said they had like 8 or 10 babies in one day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a record for them. So at my hospital, my first hospital, our record for the most babies in one day was like 32
Dang, it's a lot of
in
babies.
one day. In 1 month, it was like 500.
Oof.
So when you think about that, and that's the volume of a
Mhm.
civilian hospital versus a military hospital, like that's the difference
Meanwhile,
and the
BDAC
Yeah.
experience
had
you're
like
getting.
3 L&D
2.
rooms, I think. 2.
It's 2, yeah.
Yeah.
The most babies I have delivered in one day is 4.
Wow.
All people do,
Sold.
it pissed me off,
So
especially about BDAC, because all people do in Korea is have freaking babies because you can't get a freaking job because it all goes to the Koreans. And they don't have a military hospital equipped for that. Pisses me off, man. Oh.
But for Korea, which this could be a conversation for another time, I can't sing enough praises about home birthing center, even though it's far and it's in
I wish I had
BFE,
done that.
Seoul. They have an OR in the birthing center in case you need anything. They offer walking
so cool.
epidurals.
That's
And
so
they
cool.
have massive birthing tubs with like something that hangs down so you can literally hold while you're in the tub, and you get a doula every time. You don't have to search for one. They have a doula staff at home, and you can choose one of their doulas, just part of the care, instead of having to search for one yourself.
I don't know if this was the way I got my epidural or if this is how it is at BDAC too, but I had a walking epidural at BDAC. I felt a lot. It was just like it took the edge off. And I was like very
And they let you walk
mobile.
around?
So I didn't walk around because, like I said, like by the time I got the epidural, I was like literally he finished and I was like, no, so I'm gonna push now. And so I'll get into more detail, but I was able to like maneuver myself and move around and like into
So it does
the
take,
position I wanted
epidurals
to
do
be.
take time to fully kick in.
Oh, maybe
And
that's
then
what
a
it
big
was
part
then.
of like the constant, I always tell people 30 minutes to an hour, potentially. With Declan, it took me like an hour and a half to 2 hours to be fully numb. And if you were about to have a baby, you would never get that fully numb because they probably didn't put you on a continuous drip at that point, or it got turned off right after. So
know.
you just got the first like bolus that probably took the edge off, but you still felt
there was so much
a ton.
pressure. I was not enjoying it. But
Yeah.
but like
You mean
it
it wasn't fun? What do you mean?
I was not in as much pain as I was before.
Yes. So it took that job. Yeah.
That makes me feel so much better about
doesn't-
doing it naturally again then.
Yeah, it probably just took the edge off, which the like annoying part is once you're at that point of labor, like, is it really worth it?
You're almost there.
And I felt like
I was
with Ella,
mad when I had her so fast after.
With Ella, I was calm, cool, and collected literally until I was pushing her out. Like in the contractions, I would make
yeah.
We got halfway through the questions, so we're gonna have to do a part 2 for the other 7 questions on this because we want to respect your time. So we are going to go ahead and do a pivot into our Momtroversial moments of the week. We do this every episode. It's the moments that make you laugh, the moments that make you cry, and the moments that are just, yep, that's mom life. And to start us off this week, we're going to kick it off to Alyssa and let you share your Momtroversial moment first.
My Momtroversial moment happened like a week ago. I put my kids to bed. Put my kids to bed. And we put them down and they have like sister time, and then we come in and tuck them in a few minutes later. So having their sister time, I come in and tuck them in, and I walk in. They have a bathroom inside their room. So I walk in and the floor is wet. I was like, why is the floor wet? And I said, why is it wet, Reagan? And she goes, oh, because we were putting our lammies in the potty. And I was like, what? I'm not proud of this. I lost my mind. Like Ryan was in the bathroom and he came in. He was like, I'll take the stuff down to the laundry room. And then like later he was like, you literally have to apologize to them in the morning. And I did.
Good for him.
I lost my mind. I was like, because they're 2 and 3.5, but they know they've never done this before and they know full well what the potty is for. I was like, they got themselves soaked. They got the bed soaked, like pillows.
The worst.
They literally went to bed with only a sheet because that was all I had for them. And I was like, you know what? This is a natural consequence. Like,
yeah,
sucks to suck. But yeah, it was not my finest moment. Not any of our finest moments, to be honest. Ryan did a pretty good job, but he came in on the tail end.
We're not judging you. That's so
things you never thought you would say as a mom. Ooh. No, your lammies don't go in the potty.
I was so pissed.
Toilet water on everything is a nightmare. That's a nightmare too.
Yeah, I don't really know when I've been that angry before. I was so mad. Oof.
I would be mad too. I
It's
respect
so
it.
tricky.
I get it.
Same.
Yeah. Tori, what's your momtroversial moment?
I was trying to think. I think I'm gonna highlight Johnny this week. So I've formally given him kudos on saying like, "Mom, I'm gonna respect your boundaries and stuff," and he still does really well with that. I'm not gonna take that back. But something he's been doing recently that just like cracks me up, but it's like, I have to be like, okay, you can't laugh at the moment, right? Because that'd be unprofessional and it would defeat the purpose of the moment. Well, when he doesn't want to do something, he says, no, that's so rude. That's my boundaries. And I'm like, it's not your boundaries. You just don't want to do something. That's not the same thing. Like if I tell you to go like, pick up your clothes and put them in the dirty clothes hamper, that's not your boundary. I'm not violating your boundaries. Like that's just something that you have to do. But yeah, his whole thing, that's so rude. That's so rude. That's my boundaries. And I just like in my head, I'm freaking dying because I'm like, oh, this is so cute. It's cute and it's hilarious. And it's like so not even a thing. But of course, I have to maintain the composure.
That's really funny. I have 2 Declan moments that I was like going back and forth on that I'm just really proud of him for this week. But the one that I think was just the most impressive to me is he was playing with his magnet tiles at church this week. And kids, younger kids than Declan, were like Ella's age style, were coming up and wanting to take his magnet tiles or bust down his tower. And normally he doesn't know how to express his emotions and he just loses it. But this week, when they would come up, he would say, "No, thank you. I don't want you to play with that. No, thank you. Don't touch that."
Go,
And
Jackie.
actually using his words, he did it on 3
Aw.
different occasions. And so every time I heard that, because that's what I've been trying to teach him, is just say, "No, thank you. Like, I don't want to play with you right now." Or, "No, thank you. Like, this is mine. You can have it when I'm done."
Yeah.
And so when I heard that, then I'm able to go and step in and be able to either, pivot, redirect to the other kid, or for him, what we would do is I'd help him pick up his stuff and we would move it. I
Mm.
would say, "Okay, why don't we, instead of being in the middle of the room, why don't we go move and go over to this corner where it's just you over here?" And so he would do that and he would pivot. And then if they came back up, he would just
Yay.
say that. And then I would be there and redirect. And I was just so proud of him.
Yay, buddy.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to our labor and delivery questionnaire in the wild side of motherhood. If you enjoy listening to our podcast, if you enjoy hearing us talk and hanging out with us, we would love if you guys could subscribe to whatever platform you listen to and rate. It takes 2 seconds. Give us thumbs up, 5 stars, even drop a comment if you want. That's really helpful to any podcast you listen to just get us out there for more years, more opportunities to just join the conversation of the wild side of motherhood and add more people to the tribe. We will do a part 2 of this episode for you guys to finish the rest of the questions that were submitted. If you have any more questions that you would like us to include in that, follow us on Instagram at Momtroversial Podcast. And you can just send the questions to our DMs and I will write them down and add them to the list. But until next time, keep it Momtroversial.
Hey.